In Cuba, people have more access to healthcare than they do here.
I'll tell you about because I have first-hand experience about access to healthcare in the USSR, because the system that they have in Cuba today is the same exact system that we had in the USSR. I'm sure we all had problems with our teeth. Just one example, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, see, we all have, right? So in your lifetime, we have to go and see dentists, whether you like it or not. It's the fact of life, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you go to dentist
Privileged
today,
fact of life, but continue.
now when you go and see a dentist in this country, at least in the past, I'm sure, I don't know, maybe 50 years, or at least from the time when Novocaine was invented. Well, it's my phone. I have to deposit money to my car before I get a ticket.
You're very prosperous.
Yes, I can pay $3.50 an hour, right?
Yes.
So in the Soviet Russia, there was no anesthesia, nothing. So imagine having your teeth drilled with no anesthesia.
Well,
nothing.
Would you say that was directly an example of socialism?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But would you say fundamentally the Soviet Union was a socialist? I mean, really think about it. It was a socialist country when there's huge industrial, military enterprises being built.
Look, now we talk about the semantics, and that's another thing that kind of bothers me. North Korea calls itself, you know, DPARK stands for the first letter D.
Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Right. So how D is DPRK?
Well, that was a little different than my example about the Soviet Union being.
No,
the Soviet Union's better off now, and in the 90s when the GDP
no doubt.
What part of
Moscow. Moscow. And guess what? Moscow is the most prosperous. In fact, most of the interest and prosperity is in Moscow.
Barons.
Yeah, the oligarchs.
Whatever you call it. Whatever you call
Call them what they are. Oil barons.
But the salary, the average salary in Russia has increased dramatically today. And
Per capita.
per individual.
Well,
The opportunities have increased exponentially. You can travel overseas. You can have your own business.
I would definitely like documentation on that.
See the cap over there? Do you think you can get that one in Russia? Soviet Russia? No. I see this bandana over here. Do you think you can get one in Russia? Well, bandana maybe yes. They were free.
I'll make them.
For the Octobrists.
But people in the Soviet Union per capita played more sports, they read more literature, they went to more plays, and they participated all in that than anyone else in the world historically.
Really?
Yeah,
more participation in the Soviet Congress?
I mean, those who survived the Stalin's purges, those who survived let's say, Khrushchev's,
Nazi invasion.
The Nazi invasion. Well, yeah, those who survived, yeah.
Socialism defeated it?
Well, you know, of course, that we supplied. You know Studebaker. Have you heard the name Studebaker? No. But you claim to know history well, especially when it comes to the Second World War. You never heard of Studebaker?
Is our knowledge of history defined well if we knew Studebaker?
By knowing one person.
It's extremely important. But I'm sure you heard of
I blame
Kalashnikov.
American history
No, hold
politics.
on. I'm sure you heard of Kalashnikov. I'm sure you heard of about T-34, right? The tank T-34. But you never heard of Studebaker. Well, guess what? Probably if not for the American Studebakers, they wouldn't have won the war. Now, what Napoleon? It's a truck, yes, all-terrain truck, and what stopped the Germans from taking Moscow over was what?
Well, actually, wait a second.
Bad roads.
No, but
bad roads, weather.
Wait a second. But Stalin,
Yes.
First of all, had to deal with the fact that no one was opening up a Western Front until until D-Day. So most of the war was fighting on his own. No one was fighting a land war.
The Second World War was in. The Second World War was in, besides Europe, North Africa, right?
Yes.
The Second World War was in India. The Second World War was in Iraq and Iran. The Second World War was all the way from Papua New Guinea, almost Australia, and up
Indonesia.
and up to Japan eventually. So the theater of the Second World War was huge, right?
And who did a majority
So the so-called second, and China, by the way, of course.
The Soviet Union.
And China is across the street.
But
My name is Candy.
Why did the Soviet Union win the war? I mean,
Why did it? Well,
in the 1930s, they knew that they were going to be invaded, and they moved a lot of their industrial production behind the Ural Mountains. You know,
No,
Yes.
no,
Magna
not
City
before.
entirely
But
built-
look,
yeah,
I mean,
entirely
history
before, in the
seems to. I mean, we can go on and on about history, but I really would like to go back to China, because that's where we started. How your Chinese model is different from the Soviet model. I mean, that's the key. I mean, you haven't answered that question that I started with.
A lot of the
I'm sorry that we're going around and around.
A lot of the contradictions, I think, that happen in China, in terms of like, whether problems in infrastructure or problems with distribution of food or whatever. Most of that, I would say, they made an attempt to rely on the masses. And if there was issues within the party, a lot of that was trickled down to the masses. Masses generally dealt with contradictions, but when Stalin would want to deal with a problem, I mean, he would just, murder another party member.
And Mao Zedong didn't murder anybody?
Well, I mean,
Revolution
Mao
is going to
Zedong?
happen.
Mao Zedong didn't murder anybody? Really?
I mean, what? So everyone talks about Mao murder, but what? Tell me. What are you referring to about?
Well, I'm
mass
referring
murder?
Mao being the biggest killer the humankind has ever known. I mean, the largest one. No one killed more people than Mao Zedong.
Hitler didn't?
But no, not even Hitler.
Because Hitler didn't just kill 6 million Jews.
I know.
He killed
that.
20 million.
I know.
Russian innocent civilians.
But even then, even when you factor in all the deaths in the Second World War, Mao Zedong still tops them all.
But that number, you think about that, is that, seriously, there's never been a single number under Mao's reign that they've been able to define of how many.
Roughly 50, 60 million. Roughly.
It changes a lot.
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, plus or minus
the
10 million people. I mean, each human being is invaluable. And we're talking about 10 million human beings, yeah, but the reason it is... But the reason it's the case is because, I mean, who's going to count this plus or minus,
How much has capitalism killed? How much has capitalism killed since George Washington to Barack Obama?
When did capitalism start in this system?
No, because we want to, because your
19
point,
when?
19th century.
19th century, and you are referring to the Indians.
Contemporary.
You're talking about Indians being killed by capitalism when you just said that capitalism actually started in the 19th century. It's just that doesn't.
We're talking about the United States. The United States.
contemporary capitalism.
Okay. So let's talk about the deaths caused by the United States.
From George Washington to Barack Obama.
I don't even know what era you want to talk about. You could just talk about the Cold War. We could just talk about that.
Yeah, we can start from the Cold War. So, give me examples. I mean, I can list all the murders, and keep in mind one really important issue. There's a difference between, I mean, people talk about, let's say, we having the largest population of inmates and stuff like that. Well, yeah, because our law enforcement works very well. I mean, if you break the law.
I'd be very careful in saying that in some neighborhoods you.
Well, generally, compare. I mean, everything's
Stop and frisk. Sean
again,
Bell being murdered.
Look.
50 bullets.
You're splitting hairs again. We're talking about
Alex, it's systematic.
Alex, yeah, but fine. Even if we assume that that's the case, I mean, let's talk about the numbers. If we talk about 50 innocents being hypothetically murdered without due process, without trial by the so-called capitalist imperialism, compared to what, about 100 million murdered by the system that you advocate, the system that I lived in? I mean, it's totally incomparable.
Well, first of all,
would you agree with that or not?
I think that there's many factors that we don't take into account when we talk about Mao or even Stalin. Right?
Okay, how many people did Mao kill?
I don't know. There's no exact number.
Did he kill 1 million?
He killed more than 1 million.
Did he kill 10 million?
But in change and in bringing about revolution, that's going to happen.
So imagine that you are part of Maoist movement. Right. You are part of that revolution. That's exactly what happened in USSR and China as well. But I know USSR better, of course, because that's where I live, and I studied history much more than Chinese history. Virtually every early revolutionary, every early revolutionary, major ones, not like little Kronstadt sailors who actually did the revolution, by the way, and Kronstadt sailors and murdered by Trotsky. But the prominent revolution, like Bukharin, even Trotsky himself,
Okay, but
they were murdered by their fellow revolutionaries. So how does that justify murdering true revolutionaries?
Are you opposed to the American Revolution? Would you oppose that legacy?
The American Revolution was us fighting the British, right or wrong? The Russian Revolution was the Russians fighting Russians. See the difference?
Okay, but my point is that in the American Revolution, like the Russian Revolution, rebellions came up, like the Whiskey Rebellion.
But
Wasn't that suppressed?
But once you have won, see, that's the key. Once the American Revolution was over,
Let's talk about
let me just 1 second. So once let's say the American Revolution was over, we did not start doing purges. Have you ever heard of American purges?
Yes! Of course. They're going on right now, brother.
American Revolution.
2.2 million people incarcerated. That is a purge.
That's the purge.
That is a purge.
So there's no difference between criminals being put behind bars.
They are not
and people. Even let's again take your argument. Let's take your argument that they're not criminals.
Sure.
They're not murdered. And you just
yes,
said
they
that
are murdered.
being behind bars is not exactly.
Brother, that is psychological murder.
And the legitimate murder that does happen.
And Mao Tse-Tung
What about
actually,
the 100,000 black people murdered at the end of Reconstruction by white terrorism? There was a
Backed
choice.
by the legal system.
There
Where?
was a choice
Where?
there.
When?
In the South, in the American South, where I'm from. Where over 100,000 black people and poor white supporters were lynched.
When was it?
Huh?
When was it?
Reconstruction.
When? What year?
The 1870s.
1870s.
Okay,
Mind you,
you wanna-
1870s. Now we're
so
talking.
it's okay then.
Yes, it is, and I'll explain. I'll explain why. I mean, it's very simple.